understand. And I'm not trying to say that these people aren't accountable for their own actions, but what I would like to address is the fact that we ever enacted programs to begin with where you could get a mortgage where you had no requirement for how much income you had to have. When normal people get a mortgage, they have to qualify for a certain amount of income, but we allowed these mortgage products where that wasn't a requirement, and all of a sudden we have these home foreclosures going on, especially in my neighborhood, where they're overwhelmingly affecting North Minneapolis. There's probably more home foreclosures in North Minneapolis than any other part in the whole of Minnesota.
I think that's interesting because people tend to, I think a common belief out there is that we need government to step in and save people from the corporate banking thugs who predatorily, if that's even a word, the predatory lending, the bankers, the mortgage brokers, the investors. It's their fault. It's the private sector's fault because they're the ones who lent out this money, and now it's the national and the state governments that are coming along like they're, in spandex and cape, saving the day from these private predators. And now you bring up a point that, that it isn't so simple. In fact, it might be just, in some instances, dead wrong, where it may be government intervention from the start that kind of created this mess.
I think so in a lot of ways it was. And I think that how the government's now come about and is saying, well, we're going to bail out the banks. And we've bailed out Bear Stearns, we bailed out all these different, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all these different things that have happened. That I don't see the government stepping in and bailing out homeowners, and I don't even think they should. I don't even believe that we should be bailing out these big governmental, pseudo-governmental institutions. It's not the role of government to bail out anyone or to secure anyone's investment. I think that the private sector, you should be allowed to fail. That's part of the risk that you take when you try a private enterprise. You can't have the government assume all risk, or else the government is us, the people, and when we are shouldering all the risk for private ventures, then we're really getting ourselves into trouble.
So you have the housing crisis, which you would obviously like to see subsided, or at least, responsibly dealt with, or a lot of people in government like to look for a quick fix, and they like to look like the person who's coming along and saving the day. They like to look like the person who's going to promise citizens more and more and more. I see people running for office, and they say, and the constituents and the people in the audience are saying, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? Oh, well, I'm going to raise the minimum wage, or I'm going to provide more state funding for this neighborhood involvement program, or I'm going to provide more fill in the blank. You don't, at least from what I understand, you don't necessarily subscribe to such such rhetoric.
Well, I think that it's easy to go out and say a chicken in every pot, and promise people the world. And then what happens is you get into office and you realize, well, somebody's got to pay for these things. And if we're going to pay for one thing, we've got to rob Peter to pay Paul in a lot of cases. And so then you start getting into the game where you say, well, we have to raise revenues or raise fees, and we have to raise taxes and to pay for all these things. And I think that's really the wrong attitude, because government's role in a lot of ways should really be to provide for the enforcement of contracts and for the enforcement of private property. So if you in some way endanger me, if you come and rob me, then I want to be able to have some sort of redress. Now, in some kind of weird anarchy system, I would just come and bring my private army against you, and then we'd go to war. But in a civilized society where government is our intermediary, then I can say, well, you've wronged me, and I can have the police investigate that, prove that you've done something, and then I can seek either criminal or civil redress through our court system. And that's how we act in a civilized society. But now we get government providing some role where they say, well, you've got too much money, and that money really should go to help someone else. And now at the behest of government, we would say, well, I'm gonna take some of that and I'm gonna give it to these poor people, rather than letting you, out of the goodness of your own heart, say, well, I have a lot of money, maybe I should help those people over there.
What gets me thinking about how a small government person would address their time in office. See, people who feel that government is supposed to always be creating new laws, new organizations and agencies to be involved, or in some cases interfere, in some cases participate, provide a helping hand, however you want to term it. But for a smaller government individual, one's role might be seen as, I'm going to go to the state Congress and do what? I mean,
I think really the role that one has to take when you say, I want smaller government, is there's a lot of work to be done to kind of undo the mess that's been created.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have all kinds of government programs that are really hurting